Hello again. Welcome back for week 10. Uh, I really enjoyed the forum discussions this past week, and so looking forward to discussions this week on our topic of health justice and healthcare justice, which, as we'll see, are not necessarily the same thing. We're using as our primary source of information a PBS broadcast series from a few years ago produced by a company called California Newsreel. The title of the series is Unnatural Causes: Are Inequalities Making Us Sick? And the series on as broadcast is a 7-part series, so it's longer than we could use for our context. However, the website for the Unnatural Causes series does have clips that are available to be downloaded, and so we included an introductory clip and then clips regarding 3 health issues. The first being exposure of the community that's known as Rubberville in Louisville, Kentucky, and their higher rates of diseases, particularly cancer, due to toxic exposure. And then the second set of videos focuses around the differences between infant mortality, or the differences in infant mortality between African Americans and Caucasians, whites in America, and particularly the fact that race seems to be the primary issue in the studies that have looked at this, not so much even socioeconomic position. There's quite a moving story by Dr. Kim Anderson, an African American woman who would seem to have had all the economic advantages but still ended up having a premature infant. And then the third set of videos are surrounding health issues, particularly diabetes, in the Pima Indian Pima tribe of Arizona, and related to changes in their culture brought about by restriction of water due to those in power controlling the water, and what that did to the Pima tribe downstream, and them not being in control of their own water supply. So I've asked in the forums for you to comment and answer some questions that are suggested regarding one of the videos. I think it's too much of a burden to have you all do multiple videos and then expect the class to respond to forum comments on multiple videos. Certainly within the video you select, if you want to compare and contrast with some of the other videos, that's excellent. But if you want to focus just on one video by itself, that's perfectly acceptable as well. I've augmented the information from Unnatural Causes with information from a couple of videos I've attached by Dr. Walter Brueggemann, formerly professor, now professor emeritus at Columbia Theological Seminary in in Decatur, Georgia. And for those of you in the UCC, hopefully you know of Dr. Brueggemann, very well respected Old Testament scholar, but coming from our UCC tradition, has a lot of ways that he ties that in with New Testament messages as well. He prefers to use the title Old Testament rather than Hebrew Scripture, but obviously that tends to be how we refer to the Old Testament at CTS. And the first video is a very short video that he produced in connection as an invitation to what's known as the Justice Conference that's been held annually for the past several years. The date at the end of the video is for a conference I believe was the conference in 2011. There will be another Justice Conference in next year in February of 2014, and I've in the introduction to that video put the web link if you're interested in finding out more about the Justice Conference. I'm just learning about it myself, but I figured something that Dr. Brueggemann was associated with must have some good things going with it, because I very much respect Dr. Brueggemann's opinion, both in his biblical scholarship and how that ties into his call for social action from a faith-based situation. The second video I included is an hour-long video that Dr. Brueggemann was a video of Dr. Brueggemann giving a presentation at the 2007 General Synod of the United Church of Christ, where he focuses on several topics of justice from a faith-based situation, faith-based stance. I think that the entire video is interesting, particularly applicable to our purposes, our comments that Dr. Brueggemann makes between about minutes 25 and 34 in the video. And here he is reciting what he calls poetry, prophetic poetry from Jeremiah, in response to the injustices that he sees that Dr. Brueggemann relates to 400 years prior with the reign of Solomon and continuing up into Jeremiah's time and ending with the beginning of the Babylonian exile and the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, which Dr. Brueggemann relates as the Hebrew people's 9/11. And in that area, Dr. Brueggemann focuses on Jeremiah speaking for God and saying that God rejoices in steadfast love, hesed, justice, mishpat, and righteousness, tzedakah. And then Dr. Brueggemann describes what that means in terms of the Hebrew people as revealed in the Hebrew Scriptures. So particularly pay attention to those passages, but if you have the time, watch the entire video. I included Dr. Brueggemann in part because the unnatural causes videos are brought from a secular standpoint, and I wanted to tie in a faith-based standpoint and why it's important for us to work for love, justice, and righteousness. I probably don't have to tell anybody in the class that that is what we are called to do as people of faith in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Certainly there are other passages than what Dr. Brueggemann quotes in Jeremiah that many, if not all of us, are familiar with. Passages such as Amos and the call for justice flowing like mighty waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream, or Micah 6, where we are told what God requires of us. God requires of us to do justice and to love mercy and to walk humbly with our God. And the broader calls to justice in the other prophetic passages, the other prophetic books, is Isaiah and further in Jeremiah. And then in the New Testament, passages such as Jesus' inaugural sermon in Nazareth, where he quotes Isaiah and calling that he is there for release of the captives and for the liberation of those held in chains and for the recovery of sight to the blind. And so he places the beginning of his ministry as a call to justice. And obviously other passages such as Matthew 25, where Jesus holds up taking care of those most in need as the same as taking care of Jesus himself. And then obviously the life of Jesus as described in the Gospels, a life that is a life of sacrifice, a life that is standing up for justice for the oppressed, a life that is given for the ones who are oppressed, to show that God's love is everlasting, God's love is steadfast, that God stands for justice and that God stands for righteousness. And so, as people of faith, we are called to work towards justice as it relates to all issues, but particularly for those who are oppressed, and this would also include healthcare health and healthcare. As it states in one of the clips from Unnatural Causes, health and healthcare aren't necessarily the same thing, and why there's disparities in healthcare based on race or socioeconomic situation. one of the doctors in the video clip says that it's not just lack of health care that makes for these disparities. He compares it to the fact that having a lack of aspirin is not the reason why people get fevers. And so there are situations in our society over and above the access to affordable and high quality health care that's making people, either based on racial or socioeconomic conditions, be less healthy. Now, on the flip side, having access to affordable health care is, I believe, extremely important. Certainly, I've helped work for it in the years prior to the passage of the Affordable Care Act, and I'm an ardent supporter for the current process of getting the Health Care Act implemented. I grieve over the problems that are we're having, the growing pains that we're having, and particularly grieve over the politicization of this, and believe, as many of you do, particularly Chuck, who has told us that he's been on the forefront where he is working for healthcare reform, that what grieves me is that we should, as a nation, as a mature nation, as a nation that professes to be a caring nation, those who are often opposed to healthcare reform based on political grounds also profess to be Christians. And I cannot see how someone can profess to be a follower of Jesus Christ and not be supportive of providing health care to all of our citizens, and even a broader situation, as much of the world in their national health program provides care to the alien or the visitor without charge, or without what would happen to people visiting our country without insurance, who end up getting sick and having this huge financial burden. So I definitely am a strong advocate for health care for all. There's certainly ways that the current bill can be improved, but we have what we have because of the political climate of the time that it was passed, and we're still, unfortunately, fighting these battles. So the second question in the forum focuses a little bit more on health care rather than health justice in itself. And in your answers, I'll be interested to see what is happening in your life or in your environment as it relates to healthcare justice, and then see what discussion we have going forth from there, because I certainly believe that we are called to work for health justice and for healing as persons of faith, and healthcare justice as well. So I hope you enjoy the videos for this week. I'm looking forward to the discussion in the forum. If you get a chance, go back to last week's forums. I'm still making some comments on some of the postings, and so if you're interested in seeing those will be up within the next day or so, and then be able to fully move on to this week's. And to catch up on other things, we're still working on getting Josh's and Benjamin's videos from the week on health and healing in various faith traditions, and so those will be available for you to watch. If you have a chance to give them some comments and feedback, that's great. If not, I hope that you still watch it so that you benefit from their presentations. Also, we will post a PowerPoint presentation that Charlotte made for that week, and it's interesting. Josh, Benjamin, and Charlotte all covered different aspects of Native American healing. So if you have the chance, once we have those posted, go back and look at those. So I wish you well for this week, and look forward to seeing you again. That's not necessarily the proper term, but to engaging with you again in the forums. God bless.